me. It's Dan. It's the Lapdown Podcast, and it's been a little while, and by that I mean we missed 1 week, and I will hold my hands up and apologise for that. I made the mistake of moving house, and then essentially the last week has been nothing for me apart from moving. But welcome back. We're here. We picked a wonderful time to miss a week because it's a triple header, so we've now got so much to speak about today. But Dan Chantovitz, hello. Did you miss me, and how are you doing?
Do you know, I miss you every day, AB. I miss you every day, and I'm doing okay. I will say, obviously, it was completely your fault, the fact you decided to move house. But I did also have an element of kind of contribution to this by the fact that I just haven't really been home over the last 2 weeks. So that does make podcasting slightly more complicated, as does sitting down for 2 hours and actually watching a Grand Prix when you're not actually sitting around doing nothing for 2 hours. So, yeah, it's good. It's good to be back. And as you said, what a perfectly timed place to miss one in the middle of 3 races on the bounce.
Yeah. Is this our only triple header of the year? I don't actually know the calendar. I just find out each week when there's like one of the teams puts up a race week post. It's like, oh, cool, race week. It's happening. But I don't know if we need, and I'm going to dive hard into it. Do we ever need triple headers? Like, what is the need for 3 races in 3 weeks? Like, you've got 52 weeks in the year to fit 24 races in, which is arguably a lot as it is.
Yep.
But I know that you double 24 and you don't get 52. And I know we have to have we don't have to have, but we have the summer break in the middle or whatever. And sure, there might be the occasional double header. But do we need a triple header? Bang, bang, bang. I struggle with it.
I guess it's we have more than what we are able to fit into a window that we have, so therefore we will just try and fudge and squeeze things in as best as we possibly can. Because otherwise, if we stretch it any further, I mean, we're going to end up with about a 4-week winter break at the end of Abu Dhabi before kind of everybody turns up in Bahrain again to do their winter testing. And then poor old Adrian Newey's going to only have 4 weeks to come up with the best Formula One car ever designed. And I guess at that point there, it's probably quite nice to allow people to have a bit of time off that haven't been at home for the 12 months of the year. And those Formula One drivers, they need to go skiing and surfboarding and whatever else Formula One drivers do when they're not doing Formula One things.
You've said surfboarding there, which is an unusual take on the word surfing.
Yes.
I think your mind's gone from skiing, and then instead of snowboarding, you've gone, well, we can't go 2 snow-based exercises.
No.
So that's...
Fuck it, I'm doubling
surfboarding
down.
in there.
Surfboarding. Tell me I'm wrong. I'm not wrong. Technically, I'm
you're not wrong.
I mean, because it'd be exactly the same. Instead of saying snowboarding, you just go, what are you doing today? Oh, I'm going snowing.
Yeah.
No, that's what the weather's doing, mate. No, I'm going up the hill and I'm going snowing.
Treat yourself.
I'm right.
Treat yourself. But yeah, I feel for the teams. There was a time where I nearly got into F1 on like the media side, and it was scary at that point of like, geez, peeps, like you go from Spain to Austria back to Britain, bang, bang, bang in a week. Like, when do you actually not work? And it's like, well, I'm not sure they actually do not work, which it's a lot.
I guess
it's a lot.
I guess with that, and I can kind of resonate to it to a degree with working in sport, and you obviously can, having worked in sport, but I think sport operates in a window where it's of the opinion where people should be grateful for the opportunity to work in sport, and then therefore it is a case of, no, this is what you're expected to do. And at the end of the day, and the absolute reality is, if you turn around and said no, you didn't want to do it, there'd be 1,000 other people that would be desperate for the opportunity to fly to those different places and hang out with Lewis and Lando, etc., and take photos of a double rear diffuser, flappy front wing, and actually then your opportunity and your chance is gone. So yeah, it's a bit of a bastard, but you should be lucky to work in sport.
Well, indeed. And I think that is reflected as well. This is getting off topic. We've got plenty of racing to talk about anyway, but I think that is slightly reflected sometimes as well in like the salary level of a lot of F1 stuff. Everyone assumes like F1's full of money, you're going to get paid really well, and it's actually kind of the opposite unless you're a top dog within those teams, that there is a little bit of that tax of like, but you want to come and work for us, so therefore we don't need to incentivize you to work for us with money.
Yeah.
We incentivize you because we're who we are. But
that's
a whole other story anyway.
Yes, you're going to work an 18-hour day for 5 days on the bounce.
You're not going to get to see any of Abu Dhabi, but you're going to be in Abu Dhabi.
But we're going to take you, and we're going to give you a polo shirt.
Yeah, it's economy. You can get yourself to the airport. It's an early meet time, but we'll be there.
And to be fair, when you think about F1 merch, I mean, if you end up getting a like white polo shirt and a mid layer, you're kind of bumping up your salary by a serious wedge, aren't you?
Hundreds. hundreds.
Yeah.
Bit of news on that, actually, that Mercedes are moving to Adidas as their new teamwear partner. Puma seems to be falling away a tad.
way
It
out.
seemed like there was a time where Puma was everywhere, and now it
You're
feels
enjoying
like...
saying that as well, aren't you?
Yeah, it's fun. It's an old school, for the cricket fans among us, it's an old school 12th Man reference. With did 12th Man ever make it to the UK or outside of Australia with
Never heard of them.
whatever his guy's name is? Did impressions and stuff of commentators, and his big thing was Puma. But yeah, they've gone to Adidas. Obviously, Tommy's going with Lewis to Ferrari, which is, it feels right, doesn't it? Ferrari and Tommy Hilfiger feels like a slightly better combination than Mercedes and Hilfiger. But yeah, there you go. That's just a little bit of off-topic clothing chat.
No, it's
for
good.
you.
It's a nice little nugget that I wasn't expecting. So thank you.
There you go. I'm a fashionable guy. We don't have a huge amount to say about Spain, I don't think, because you didn't manage to see the race.
Nope.
And it was 2 weeks ago now, and I can't massively remember what happened. And that's why people come to this podcast for their breaking Formula One news and insight.
Max won.
Max won. Yay. The exciting bit, and this probably covers over the last 4 or 5 weeks now, actually, is it was competitive. And it was not a sure thing from the start who was going to win that. We had Lando on pole. We had George leading by the time they came out of the first corner because he just sent it in that slipstream. Okay, he wasn't leading by lap 3 anymore, but at least now we've got 4 constructors, realistically, because Mercedes seem like they finally got their shit together with how to design a car for this generation of cars. We've got 4 constructors and 7 drivers, because I'm not going to include Perez in it, actually fighting for the top 7 places now, which is kind of exciting.
Ferrari still count?
They're there.
Yeah,
Carlos is there.
They exist.
Charles, not so much there, but Carlos is trying.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's nice. So we don't really want to talk about Spain because we can't really talk about Spain. But generally speaking, and what will lead into Austria quite nicely, is the fact that a Sunday or a Saturday, depending on whether there's a sprint weekend, doesn't feel like it's a foregone conclusion, which it has done in recent times. And that is remarkably refreshing.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. We've said this a few times, or at least I keep banging on about it. I've got no issue with Max winning. I have the absolute utmost respects for Max Verstappen's ability as a driver and what Red Bull have done with that car. Win it all you like, mate. Fight for it. And win it on the last lap or the last few laps where all comes together.
Or when you cross
Don't
the
win it
line,
lap 1.
we can see the front nose of the car that's in second place type thing. You haven't kind of...
Does the car behind have DRS by the time you win?
Yeah.
Or are we thinking like, oh, wow, Lando's chasing him down here. He's now inside DRS. This could get exciting.
Are you in the same frame?
Great. Yeah. All I need. Yeah. Really good. Rolling back a little bit onto triple header chat. Did we need to put a sprint weekend in the middle of the triple header? It feels like they've just gone, actually, and you know what, everyone? You can only use your left hand this weekend as well. Like, why did we need to put a sprint in the middle of a triple header? I didn't even know it was a sprint. Well, I found out it was a sprint on Friday afternoon.
You know what's better than 3 Formula One races in 3 weeks?
Yeah.
4 Formula One races in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And
Do you remember there was the time when they first brought it in where you weren't allowed to say race about the sprint?
Oh, yeah.
And that was the big directive of don't you dare say race. It's not a race, it's a sprint.
But all of these people are wankers, aren't they?
Yeah,
let's be completely honest
Absolutely,
about
100%
it. I mean,
of them.
they're so far detached from anybody that actually cares about any of it, and they're absolute tossers. No one cares about the language that you use when it comes to this thing. It's a fucking race. The lights go out, and there's some checkered flags at the end, and people do some overtaking. It's a race. Yeah, fine. It's not as long as the long race, but it's a short race.
Yeah, but don't say race.
Say all I want. I don't care.
Austria. Now this is going to get nerdy for a second. Well done to whoever it was, whether it was the Red Bull Ring, whether it was the FIA, whether it was F1, but the new track limits thing of just spunk a load of gravel where we don't want you to put the car. Superb. It worked in Imola. It worked in Spielberg. Funny that, isn't it? When you don't give them an incentive to be out there, they don't go out there. And all of a sudden, last year when we had like 1,800 track limits violations, and I was getting yelled at by people on Reddit because I suggested to them that, God forbid, the 20 best drivers in the world should probably be able to put the car where they'd like to. And people go, oh, well, it's really hard to see the white line when you're in the car because you sat on the floor. Fuck off. They know exactly where the white line is. They can see the white line. They're just pushing their luck.
Yeah. Are there lots of Formula One drivers or ex-Formula One drivers that sit on Reddit forums, is there, and tell you how difficult it is to see a white line when you sit in a Formula One car? Or is...
Evidently, they've got a lot of alt accounts based on the amount of people that was jumping to defend how difficult it was to see the line and that we need to make the line. We have to use sausage curves so that the line's not on the floor because, God forbid, they can't see what's on the floor in front of them. And it's like, yeah, I think they can.
What I would say is it's quite difficult to see what's on the floor in front, like directly in front of you when you drive a normal car. But what you've got this thing, it's a brilliant thing. They're called eyes, and you can see forward with eyes. And actually, that line is a permanent. It's a constant. It's always there.
Yeah, it's not moving.
It doesn't.
They're not shifting it each lap.
Exactly. It doesn't disappear when it's like 5 meters in front of you, and then it suddenly pops, and you go, "Oh fuck! Oh my! There's a line there. Oh shit! I'm four wheels over it. Well, give me a penalty." It was interesting, actually. I think I agree. I think it's a very good addition. And at the end of the day, if you want to enforce that kind of stuff, it does make it easier if you've got an actual, not only a time penalty involved, but also something to turn around and say, actually, there's a chance that you're going to fuck yourself here if you end up dipping one of these tyres in this gravel. But actually, one of the FIA guys was saying about the fact that what they have to do is they have to consider how close the actual barriers are to the actual track without having those kind of traps in place. And he was saying that obviously if you go beyond those white lines, then you travel at higher speed closer to those barriers, and then it becomes a safety thing rather than I'm going to gain half a second here because I'm going to cut the corner type thing, which I must admit, when I heard it, I went, oh yeah, that makes sense. But I hadn't really thought about that. Is it
IndyCar where they don't have track limits and they basically just tell them, lads, if you fancy driving there, you crack on if you think it's quicker. And there's that thing round at COTA where they're essentially driving into a different country around a corner. And yeah, it does make complete sense, doesn't it? It's like everyone talks about getting rid of, what's the name of the chicane at Monaco out of the tunnel? Is that the bus stop? Is that the bus stop chicane?
Yeah, or the harbour chicane. I think it's a bus stop.
Yeah. And everyone's like, oh, it's such a clunky corner, get rid of it. It's like, no, it's there to stop these bastards, because otherwise they will go 300 miles an hour essentially into a brick wall. So we have to put these kind of chicanes in to protect them from themselves.
Yes.
You know, it's the same with why, like, DRS, they can't use that whenever they want, because if they leave it open and try and go around a corner, they're going to end up on the moon. Like, it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, it seemed to work. I did laugh that they also brought in this jazzy new AI track limits detection thing, which meant there was a blue line between the edge of the track and the white line so that it could test it. And then they essentially didn't need it because they just put some gravel down. And it's like, how much money did you spend on the AI compared to the gravel? But yeah, I don't really know a huge amount about what happened with Oscar and his track limits, because there seemed to be a little bit of back and forth afterwards. And McLaren, who were very cranky all weekend, by the way, that's a whole nother thing, were trying to sort of, and Oscar to a certain extent, although I did think he caveated it, he's very good with his media, Oscar, but I think he caveated his statement when they tried to say, oh, it's a bit stupid that you've put these gravel traps in, but I can still get a track limits without going in the gravel. And it's like, no, they didn't change the rule. They just made it easier to stop you breaking the rule. If you had all four wheels over the line, you're off the track, mate. The track's not the gravel. Like, you've done really well to be off the track and still go quick and not be in the gravel. Like, that's incredible driving. But come on, like, it's such a nice rule. It's like in the race, the 2 penalties that got handed out for crossing the white line on pit entry.
Yep.
And it was Hamilton just had literal understeer at the worst possible time. It's quite an awkward pit entry at Spielberg. Touched the white line, and they went to that Bradley Laws chap on the radio shortly afterwards, and he's like, well, yeah, it's just kind of a black and white rule, isn't it? Like, you touch the line, you're in trouble. Like, that's so nice when it's just a black and white rule and there's no arguing about it. They still argue, but there's no arguing about it.
It's a solid line at the end of the day. And as I said earlier, It doesn't move. It's there. It's a constant. It's whether you can't see it as it's under your ass when you're driving over the top of it, but you can see it when it's 10 foot in front of your nose. So, yeah, everybody knows the rule. And as you said, it's pretty cut and dry. It's similar to the jump start type thing. It's similar to unsafe releases and things. It's fairly kind of slam dunk, isn't it? But Yeah, I think they did a good job. And to be honest with you, if they don't have the barriers up against it, which obviously I hate because it just becomes a street circuit at that point, then they do need to have something in there to make sure that there is going to be a fair and consistent application of those rules. And if that means having a solid white line, if that means having some AI, and if that means having some gravel traps around the outside of the corners, go for it.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It was good. It was good. I quite like Austria as a track as well. It feels like it has enough of each little element. We've got a couple of decently long straights. I think the DRS, the way they use DRS is actually quite good in Austria, and I think that's the sort of one of the best examples of DRS, where you get the long trail down and sort of up the hill into that hairpin, which gives you Lando Norris style dive bombing opportunities. But then also there's that second shorter bite afterwards that sort of rewards you for being close enough, or potentially lets the oppo fight back, which I think is really nice. But should we lead into what is the chat, really, of the weekend? And I'll let you come off the long run on this to start with, because we've not had a chance to discuss this yet. So I think we're quite aligned on it, knowing just our general opinions on things. Max Verstappen, Lando Norris. Essentially this sprint race within a normal race within a sprint weekend. The last 10 laps of Austria, where it got interesting. Dan Jads, off you go. Discuss.
I can't believe it's taken 16 minutes and 23 seconds to get to this stage, which is remarkably impressive, because I would imagine there would be other more successful and more popular Formula One podcasts that would have just opened with that and just gone, Max is a prick. Or they'd go, Lando, the shittest bloke in Formula One history. So well done us for letting it mature.
It's because we missed a week last week, so we had to catch up.
We did, to be fair.
Other podcasts, more professional podcasts, don't just skip a week.
Also that true, but then they don't have other things to do. I mean, Max has been reprimanded by every potential way that he possibly could do. Social media has erupted because, well, at least English social media has anyway. I'm sure Dutch social media is probably a completely different thing, but I don't ever kind of delve into there. What's my thoughts on it? Well, if Red Bull hadn't have fucked up the pit stop in the first place, then it never would have happened. So that kind of creates an opportunity to turn around and say, well, if Red Bull hadn't fucked it up, that actually this thing wouldn't have been a thing. Lando, ultra aggressive, uber aggressive, some insane lunges on Max, and I think Max played it all pretty well. And some of them by Lando, I would say, were actually just a little bit desperate at points. The contact. Do you know, the actual initial contact I didn't really have a great deal of issue with. I really didn't. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily agree that Max should almost change down a gear, brake, and allow Lando to go around the outside and then try and overtake him again later. I don't particularly think Max swerved into Lando. I think he kind of quite intelligently let his car kind of drift on a line which continually made Lando's space smaller. Lando was obviously a little bit concerned about the track limit side of things, so therefore, although did have room to his left and could have used it, thought to himself, no, I don't want to get close to that white line just in case whoever the race steward is turn around and goes, oh, you've gained an advantage, you've gone off the track. And they've made contact. And that happens in motorsport. And nobody, I don't believe, does that stuff on purpose, whether it was Max or whether it was Lando that instigated it. Nobody crashes at that speed deliberately. The thing that I didn't like was afterwards when they drove out of that corner and down that downhill straight towards the other hairpin. And Max is sat there driving along, classic kind of like M25 road rage type moment. And he's driving like this. And he's not looking where he's going. And for the visually impaired that are listening to this on the podcast, I'm looking in my right-hand side rearview mirror. And he sees Lando try to go down the inside. And he goes, no. To the point that actually he forces Lando on the grass or forces Lando into the back of the Red Bull. That, I think, is the bit that made Max Verstappen look like a prick. And that's the bit I think he should get called out for, not the contact.
Which, weirdly, I've seen very little discourse around, and I think it's a very good point, that the secondary, where they were both red misting at that point, and they were now fighting like, you know, younger brother, older brother sort of thing. No one's really talking about the fact that, okay, he arguably closed the door, and I think I agree completely with you that he's not, you know, gone a whole bunch of left hand down to ram Lando in through that hairpin. I think he's been very, very clever about, I'm just going to drift lazily to the left here because I know that to be fair, the wall's relatively close in that top corner. Actually, I think in that left bit. I don't. Max is not going to try and deliberately cause contact there, but I think Max has tried to bully himself into a better position because, and again, I'm not an F1 sim racing expert, but you're not drifting left into that corner. You very much take it in a straight line, or you maybe even are actually taking it slightly drifting to the right to then go around the hairpin. Yep. So he is going against the natural flow of 71 laps into that corner, which is where I think he is a naughty boy and he is in trouble because I think he knows exactly what he's doing.
I think it's deliberate. 100%.
Oh, 100%. It's just not as malicious as some people would suggest it was. Also, it's the funniest thing, isn't it, with how delicate these cars and in particular the sidewalls of those tyres are. It was not heavy contact. They've not barged into each other. They've sort of kissed each other and then both of their wheels blew up. But yeah, I think it's the next one that was really, really naughty because the next one was... Okay, they were both deliberate. The second one, I think, was deliberate with intent and emotion. The first one is sporting, and then the second one is personal, almost. And yeah, watching it live, I was like, Lando's going to go round here and go into the barriers quite hard.
Yeah.
Because F1 cars don't work great on grass, particularly when they've got a puncture on that wheel. It was driving with a punctured back rear on grass, downhill braking. It's like, this is going to end in tears. But I think it's a really good point because, yeah, no one's really... They're all focused on the initial incident that they've ignored the rest of it. And, yeah, it was, a bit hairy. Yeah. A little bit hairy.
I think, as you said, that second one was calculated. You said it was full of emotion. I think it was premeditated. I think whichever way Lando had looked to have gone past Max at that point, Max would have driven and made sure that door or that opportunity to drive past him down that straight was off.
Yeah.
And I think at that point there, that's the bit that he should get punished for. It wasn't like, I don't know whether you saw the clip, but it's been replayed recently, and he kind of shut off Kimi Räikkönen going down the Kemmel Straight at Spa, like flat out, and Kimi come up behind him and he went this way, and then Max went, no, and then just like went straight across. And you can't do that stuff. And Max didn't do that here. And I haven't seen the onboards, but I would say that Max didn't change his steering lock. I would say that his car was on that angle and that gap just got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Should he have done it with a car alongside it? No, probably not. But I don't think it was as bad as, he's tried to drive Lando into the wall here and he's forced contact. He's done it on purpose. He hasn't done that, I don't think. I think he's deliberately closed that gap, and both of them have then kind of lost a little bit of spatial awareness. Obviously, Max is going to want to go further to left because it's a right-hand corner and it opens up the corner, means he can carry more speed through it. But yeah, the second bit was naughty. What did you make of Andrea Stella's conversation with Ted Kravitz walking down the pit lane afterwards? Because that was... Well, if we said Max's move, the second move was full of emotion, Andrea Stella's conversation with Ted Kravitz was fairly emotional.
Yeah, and McLaren are very worked up still as an organisation. I don't know if you saw the tweet they put out yesterday, but it was very much of this tweet is a factual version of events where they put the Anthony Davidson Skypad section out where Davidson basically called Max Verstappen a prick and what was he doing and said he was one completely in the wrong. And it was a very
feels like
fan
Formula
account.
Been waiting for this, isn't it? Like since
the
Max
Formula
Lewis
One
thing's finished,
stan
it's been
account.
waiting to call Max Verstappen a wanker again.
Yeah. And I have no issue with what Stella said. I think he was very eloquent. I think his points were all valid. I think although there was a lot of emotion in what he was saying, it was not necessarily emotionally charged. It wasn't like someone was in an argument and they say something they regret. I think everything he said was pretty measured. He'd obviously had a few minutes by that point to know I'm going to get some media pretty quickly here.
Yeah.
How am I going to play it? And he's probably got their media director in his ear pretty early on and being like, right, here's the things you can and can't say, or we, don't say this, do say that, or whatever. I think Stella handled the situation a lot better than Horner did. We all know that Christian Horner is the world's biggest wind-up, but and to be fair, I don't mind Christian Horner, and I don't mind the way he does his media generally, because his role as a TP is to essentially do that, to back his blokes to the end and to be a bit of a nibbler. And when we used to have the Toto Horner rivalry, it was great fun. And I think people don't quite realize that, yes, they're real people in real situations, but it's a little bit like watching The Trip with Coogan and Rob Brydon, where they are playing themselves to the nth degree. And when we had peak Toto and Horner, that was The Trip F1 edition. Horner doesn't really have a mate to do that with anymore, so this is the first time we've seen it in a while. For Horner to suggest that Max had done nothing wrong and that Max was a saint in that immediate response, I maybe let him get away with it because he might have only seen one replay. That's bollocks. He knew exactly what had happened, but he could lean on that. To have come out since and still be doubling down that Max did nothing wrong, it was fine, it was racing, he does this before, whatever. We just need to be a little bit careful there now. I know Red Bull already sort of villainise themselves a little bit, but you've got to be a little bit careful that you're not turning yourself into the Death Star, and that side of things where you almost act as if the rules don't matter, you're above that, this is your thing. So yeah.
I don't get the impression Red Bull have face to save, if that makes sense.
And it probably is backing up their own fan base. The more he says stuff like that, it's probably actually making it better.
Absolutely. I don't think you've got anybody at the moment that watches Formula One that's kind of indifferent about Red Bull as an organisation. It kind of feels like you either have the cap, the jacket, the polo shirt, the trousers, and the trainers, and the pants and the socks to go with it, and the little kind of backpack, and you've got like Red Bull stickers all over your rooms and all of this other stuff, or you think they're a bunch of wankers. That's kind of, there's no kind of like, yeah, they're all right, aren't they? They're not bad. They're not like an Alpine or a Haas or an Aston or a Ferrari. You're not kind of like, oh, I'm a Mercedes fan, but God, isn't it nice that Charles won at Monaco? Like, there's none of that about Red Bull. It's kind of like, I love it or I fucking hate you. And I think with that kind of Christian Horner kind of double down on it, he knows exactly that. He's not going to win. Yeah. Anybody that doesn't like Red Bull, he isn't going to win any of these fans. You're either there, you're invested now, and you will die for them on the hill, or Christian knows that you're a lost cause and you're not actually interested in them as an organisation anyway. Is that ever going to change? I don't think so. That they've operated in a pretty ruthless kind of way ever since they've existed, even before the Max Lewis thing. And they've kind of villainized themselves and bits of fan bases and stuff. And they probably quite like being hated, I think.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting, I think, roll on 26, or even to a certain extent, the back end of this year and into next year, as people do aggressively catch them. What we were saying earlier, that the competition's back. It's very hard to villainize yourself and play that supervillain role from P3 in the constructors.
Yeah.
You know, they can do it at the minute while they are, yes, they've dominated since 22, but they were sort of going toe to toe in 21 as well. So they've had 3 or 4 years at this point now of being far and away the best. You can't have a huge amount of big dick energy without a big dick, to back it up. So that'll be interesting on how that plays out, particularly. And I'm not allowing myself to be sold on it, but Toto Wolff is still stirring that pot, implying that he's getting Verstappen for next year. And he is still coming out and making it seem like that is likely almost in some of his talk. And then when you try and mirror that with Carlos saying he's, not rushing to any conclusions and whatever, and you think, Toto, I think you're just being the world's biggest shithouse. But also, the more you say it, the more I think, woo!
Yeah, and is Carlos kind of holding just to see if Max goes, because then there might be a text message from, well, I mean, hopefully not a text message.
Well, I think that 100%
they
would
might
be.
have a penis pic on there, but hopefully like a phone call from Christian Horner to say, Carlos, fancy it? But they've always been
100% they would be.
Even when they've not been winning, they've always been a ruthless, hard-nosed organisation. They've given their drivers half a season and gone, nah, fuck off. You're not working. Go. And we're going to bring somebody else in. Even when they haven't been winning, they've always had that kind of villain-type mentality. And people have warmed to people like Pierre Gasly and a Red Bull and Alex Albon and less so Daniel Kvyat and all of these other guys that have had a go in that kind of father team that have then just got to a point in their career and just gone, nah, you're shit, fuck off. And they've moved on. They're brutal, they're ruthless, and that's never going to change regardless of where they are on the grid. The other thing I think, just to kind of wrap that bit up as well, did you see the they call it the pit afterwards, and the Rachel Brooks conversation with Lando and then with Max as well. Did you see those bits?
No.
So
I haven't seen
it. It was
those
Lando
ones.
first, and the question to Lando was, "Have you lost any respect for Max because of that?" And he pretty much just turned around and said yes. He said, "Look, Max has got an opportunity to apologize here because he's done something wrong. He's gone hard on Max." Rachel Brooks has then asked Max the same question and added well, Lando said that he'll speak to you again if you apologise. And Max has just gone, well, we'll talk about it. I'll have a look. that was it. Done. So
I know they didn't fly home together.
yeah. So
Helmut was like, yeah, they usually fly together, and he made different arrangements this time. It's like, ooh, spicy.
imagine being in a world where you can just make different arrangements and jump on a different private jet.
Which jet would you like to take home?
It's wild. Silverstone,
Yeah. Silverstone, and following on a little bit from that, the big exciting news that we probably should have started with at the top. Lance Stroll's got a new gig, and so does Pierre Gasly.
Yay,
Wow, two of the
good
more
for them.
exciting driver announcements of the week. There
So
we go.
good.
We've announced it. We've said it. Tick it off and move on.
Congrats, Lance. That's
Silverstone.
well earned as well, to be fair.
Oh, absolutely. Both of them have really turned it on. Silverstone might turn it on because she's looking damp. I mean, it's England in July. Of course, it's looking damp, but she do be looking damp.
Moist.
Which I bring it on. I think it's actually also the perfect timing for us to have a classic British changeable weather Grand Prix because we've got 7 cars plus Perez fighting on raw pace. If we can then bring changeable track conditions and strategy on top of that, it might be, and I'll say this now, and it will be an absolute parade for 60 laps. It could be a mega banger. It could be an El Nino F1 Grand Prix event. Or it could be an absolute bore fest. But I think either way, Max Verstappen's going to get the arse booed off him.
I mean, no one's going to be there anyway because they can't sell any tickets. So Max has got a bit of a free pass this week. He's going to stand on the top of the podium with his trophy, and it's just going to be silent. There's not going to be no booze, there's going to be no cheers, and there's nothing other than the fact there's just nobody there because nobody can afford £1,000 a ticket to go and watch Max Verstappen win at Silverstone. But you are right. I mean, every time that you get a little bit of sogginess with a Formula One Grand Prix, you start getting a little bit excited. And as you said, Britain, in the height of summer, i.e. July, always offers you that ability just to fuck it down half an hour before the race because we don't really have little rain showers anymore. You just get rain. It's like walking into a shower and then pressing the button and then you go, oh, all right, I'm wet now. And then you go back out. So if we get one of those and then it starts drying up and you get the ground staff out there with their super sopper and start doing all up and you end up with like a Hamilton in Turkey where he's like driven through his intermediates to the point that they're slicks now. And then you end up with cars going, well, I'm going to start on wets and I'm starting on inters. And then you get a car that goes, oh, we've kind of bollocksed it. Should we stick slicks on for a bit? And then that might work. And then you get all these, like, just give me that.
Yeah, it's like Zandvoort last year, where you had cars going like 5 seconds a lap quicker than others, but that was by design because they were like, "No, it's going to come back to us. We're going to hold on." Like that's peak, and also trying to go through like, you know, Maggots and Beckett's and Cops and whatever in the wet or changeable conditions or whatever. It's a good track for some damp greasiness. But yeah, look, hey, let's see what happens on the end of the triple header. I think there's a lot of nice ingredients in the mix, and then we've added some spice on top with a little bit of drama out of the last one.
Because that's not going to be left, is it? The first question to both Max and Lando when they turn up at Silverstone on Friday or Thursday will be: Have you cleared the air yet, lads?
Just a minute.
Are you friends again now? The first question.
And then if we get a situation where they're like they qualify 1 and 2 or something, and we're heading down into that first corner, you know, the first sequence of corners with those two there, everyone's going to be like, "Oh my god!"
Imagine it happens in FP1.
Oh, they might explode.
Just give me that in FP1. Like just Lando comes over the radio and just goes, "Max has blocked my lap."
Yeah,
inject it.
Give it to me. Give it to me. Well, look. What we've done there is we've compressed 2 of 3 races very neatly into a 35-minute catch-up. Perhaps not with quite so much direct reaction to some of the races because my head has got nothing in it right now apart from boxes
and dust
and moving. But look, let's see. When's summer break, by the way? Is it summer break after Silverstone, or is there another one?
I got a feeling there might be another one. I know they come down to Goodwood the weekend after Silverstone for the Festival of Speed. then I think they might go somewhere else, and then I think it's a summer break. Is Hungary before or after a summer break? I always forget. I think it's before, and then I think there's a break until it goes to Monza.
Let's have a look. The Hungarian Grand Prix is the 21st of July, and then the Belgian Grand Prix is the 28th of July. So we've got another double bubble.
Nice.
And then we have a month off until the Dutch Grand Prix.
Gotcha. Okay,
So there we go.
hopefully they've got their package holidays sorted, and Max and Lando can go to Benidorm for a week or something.
That'd be cute.
That'd be nice.
That'd be cute.
Go
Right,
see
well, that's
Sticky
us for the day. If you'd like to get involved, you can email lapdownpod@gmail.com if you've got thoughts. If you think that Max Verstappen was absolutely in the right and that Lando Norris is the worst person in the world ever, you can tell us that. If you think Dan Jads is the best person and I'm the worst person in the world ever, you can tell us that as well. You can do... I will apologise on behalf of everybody that the Lapdown Pod socials have been a little bit inactive, as has the podcast recently, but we'll have a nice rebuild over the next little bit. We're in a transition phase, like the Mercedes was, and then we're going to blossom and George Russell's go. Oh, by the way, George Russell won Austria. Just going to throw that out there. Throw that out there now. I don't think we actually mentioned that anymore. George won. Well done, George. George won. We probably should have boxed that off. That was quite funny. He was 16 seconds off the lead when they came together, and then he won the bastard. So well done. Dan, where can they find you if they'd like to listen to things that you say on the internet?
At Dan Jads on the internet. Our Cricket, find me there. There's various different things and stuff that you might enjoy.
Marvellous. If you want to come watch me play games in a new setup, you can at twitch.tv/hey look it's Alex. That's it for us. We'll be back hopefully next week now. We can get back into a rhythm after, fingers crossed, a spicy Silverstone. And we'll see what happens.
Enjoy.
See you next time.
Enjoy.